The cathedral doors were massive. Heavy oak, carved with angels and saints, the kind of doors that whispered old money and older power. I watched them from my seat in the front row, my heart hammering against my ribs. Any second now. Julian stood at the altar in his custom tuxedo, his dark hair perfectly styled, his smile confident. Beside him stood Claire Montgomery, billionaire heiress, draped in white lace that probably cost more than most people's houses. The priest cleared his throat, ready to begin the ceremony that would merge two fortunes into one empire. That's when it happened. The doors swung open with a groan that echoed through the vaulted ceiling. Every head turned. 3 identical boys walked down the aisle in matching navy suits. 6 years old, dark curls and those eyes. One blue, one green. Heterochromia. Just like their father. The congregation gasped. Julian's face drained of color, going ghost white in seconds. I stood up slowly, deliberately, my voice carrying across the stunned silence. Julian, your legacy just arrived. His eyes found mine and I saw it. Pure terror. The priest's hands froze on his Bible. Claire turned to look at the boys, then at Julian, confusion washing over her face. I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. My hands were steady now, though they'd shaken all morning while I got the boys ready. You told me they didn't exist, Julian, I said, my voice echoing in the cathedral. You told me I was imagining things to get a payout. That I was delusional, desperate. I opened the envelope slowly, letting the moment stretch. Inside were 3 DNA test results, printed on official laboratory letterhead. I held up the first one. Ethan Pierce. 99.9% probability of paternity. I held up the second. Noah Pierce. 99.9%. The third. Liam Pierce. 99.9%. The silence in the cathedral was absolute. Even the organist had stopped mid-note. I looked at Julian, at his frozen expression, at Claire's trembling hands clutching her bouquet. Still think I'm lying, Julian? Still think I'm just a failed scientist looking for a payday? Claire's voice was barely a whisper. Julian? What is this? He didn't answer. He couldn't. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. 6 years ago, I'd stood in Julian's office at Pierce Pharmaceuticals, my hands shaking as I told him I was pregnant. Correction. That I was pregnant with triplets. He'd been sitting behind his mahogany desk, the one that cost more than my yearly salary. I remembered every detail of that room. The awards on the walls. The view of downtown through floor-to-ceiling windows. The cold smile on his face when I finished talking. Elena, he'd said, like he was explaining something to a child. Our family doesn't have mistakes like this. He'd pulled out his checkbook, written an amount, and slid it across the desk. $10,000. Take this and disappear. Get rid of the problem, or keep it quiet. I don't care which. But if you try to come after me, you'll regret it. I'd stared at the check, at the casual way he dismissed 3 lives. Our lives. I'm keeping them, I'd whispered. He'd laughed then. Actually laughed. Then you're keeping them alone. And Elena? If you try to prove anything, I'll make sure you can't. I'll have you blacklisted from every lab in the city. Good luck getting a DNA test without access to a facility. He'd kept that promise. For 6 years, I'd tried. Every door slammed in my face. Back at the wedding, Claire's face had transformed from confused to furious. She stepped away from Julian, her veil trailing behind her like a ghost. Julian, she said again, her voice stronger now. Is this true? He finally found his voice. The charm, the smooth talking, all the skills that had made him a successful CEO kicked in. Claire, don't listen to her. She's a liar. A failed scientist who got fired from my company and has been trying to extort me ever since. He pointed at me, his fingers shaking. She probably bought those results online. Faked them. This is a setup to ruin our wedding, to get money from your family. Claire looked at me, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Then she looked at the boys. Ethan, Noah, and Liam stood in the aisle, holding hands, their matching eyes watching everything. Those impossible eyes that couldn't be faked or bought. One blue, one green, just like Julian's. Those eyes, Claire whispered. Julian sneered. Colored contacts. She's desperate, Claire. Don't fall for this. That's when Claire walked forward, her heels clicking on marble, and took the DNA results from my hand. She read them carefully, her lips moving slightly. Then she turned to Julian and slapped him. Hard. The sound cracked through the cathedral like a gunshot. Liar, she hissed. The wedding was falling apart, but I wasn't finished. I'd waited 6 years for this moment. Planned every detail. Anticipated every response. I reached into my purse again and pulled out a gift-wrapped box. Silver paper, white ribbon, elegant and expensive-looking. I handed it to Claire. This isn't just about the kids, Claire. Consider this a wedding gift. Look at what he's been doing with your father's investment money. Claire's hands trembled as she took the box. Her father, Richard Montgomery, stood up from his seat 3 rows back. He was a tall man, silver-haired, with the kind of face that had negotiated billion-dollar deals and destroyed competitors without breaking a sweat. What is she talking about, Julian? Richard's voice was ice. Julian's face went from white to red. Richard, don't listen to her. She's trying to sabotage. Open it, Claire, I said calmly. Claire tore off the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside were documents. Bank statements. Wire transfers. Corporate filings. She pulled out the first page, and I watched her eyes scan the numbers. $50 million. Her father's investment in Julian's revolutionary new treatment. Money that was supposed to save lives, fund research, change the world. Where did it go? Claire's voice was barely audible. I smiled. Ask Julian about the shell company registered in the Cayman Islands. Ask him whose name is on it. Claire flipped through the documents, her face growing paler with each page. The shell company was called Meridian Holdings, registered 18 months ago. The sole director and beneficiary? Vanessa Cole. The wedding guests were murmuring now, a low buzz of shock and speculation filling the cathedral. Claire's maid of honor, standing just off to the side in a pale pink dress, went rigid. Vanessa. Beautiful Vanessa, with her perfect smile and perfectly timed comfort during Claire's pre-wedding stress. Vanessa, who'd helped plan this entire event. It's not what you think, Vanessa started, but her voice cracked. Richard Montgomery snatched the documents from his daughter's hands. His eyes moved fast, years of business experience letting him digest financial information in seconds. $50 million, he said slowly. You told me that money went into clinical trials, into research and development for the cardiac treatment. Julian straightened, trying to recover his composure. It did. These documents are fake, Richard. She's a disgruntled former employee with access to. The wire transfers are real, I interrupted. Verified by 3 independent auditors. The money left your account, went to Pierce Pharmaceuticals, and was immediately transferred to Meridian Holdings. From there, it's been systematically drained. Luxury cars. A villa in Spain. Private jet rentals. I looked at Vanessa. How's that penthouse in Monaco, Vanessa? Enjoying the view. Vanessa tried to run. She kicked off her heels and bolted toward the side exit, her pink dress flying behind her. I stepped into the aisle, blocking her path. For a failed scientist, I'd kept in shape. She crashed into me, and we both stumbled, but I recovered faster. Going somewhere, Vanessa? I grabbed her arm. Or should we talk about the special projects account you've been draining for the last 3 years? She wrenched away from me, but security was already moving. Not cathedral security. Richard Montgomery's personal detail. 2 men in dark suits appeared at the exits, and a third approached Vanessa. Let me go, she screamed. I didn't do anything wrong. Julian promised we'd be together. He said once he married Claire, we'd take the money and… She stopped, realizing what she'd just admitted. The congregation exploded into shocked whispers. Claire stood frozen, the bouquet fallen from her hands, white roses scattered across the floor like snow. Richard Montgomery's face had gone from angry to absolutely murderous. He didn't care about Julian's affair. I'd learned that about powerful men. They cared about their money, their empires, their reputations. You stole from me, Richard said quietly, walking toward Julian. You looked me in the eye, promised innovation and breakthroughs, and stole $50 million. Richard snapped his fingers, and his security team moved toward Julian. The CEO tried to back away, but there was nowhere to go. The altar trapped him. Richard, we can discuss this, Julian said, his voice taking on a pleading edge I never heard before. There's been a misunderstanding. I can explain the transfers. It's complicated corporate restructuring. Don't insult my intelligence. Richard cut him off. I've built 3 companies from the ground up. I know what embezzlement looks like. He turned to his head of security, a man built like a tank. Take him to the vestry. Hold him there until my lawyers arrive. And get me every document he has in his possession. The security team moved in. Julian tried to fight, actually threw a punch that glanced off one guard's shoulder. It was pathetic. Within seconds, they had him by both arms, dragging him toward the small room behind the altar. You can't do this, Julian shouted. This is kidnapping. I'll have you arrested. Call it citizen's arrest, Richard said coldly. I'm sure the police will be very interested in these documents once my legal team finishes with them. The congregation watched in stunned silence as Julian was hauled away. Claire stood like a statue, tears streaming down her face, her perfect wedding destroyed. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Then the lights went out. Every single light in the cathedral died at once, plunging us into darkness. Screams erupted from the guests. I grabbed Ethan's hand immediately, finding Noah and Liam by touch in the blackness. Stay close to me, I whispered. The darkness lasted maybe 30 seconds, but it felt longer. I heard scuffling, shouting, the sound of something heavy falling. Then the emergency generators kicked in, and dim lights flickered to life along the walls. The first thing I noticed was Julian. He was gone. Richard's security team stood in the aisle, looking furious and confused. One of them had a bloody nose. He's gone, the head guard said, touching his face gingerly. Someone hit me from behind. The second thing I noticed was Claire. She was on her knees, searching frantically through the scattered papers and roses. The DNA results, she said, her voice rising to panic. They're gone. Someone took them. I felt a flash of worry, but it passed quickly. I'd planned for this. Of course I had. Julian was predictable. Desperate men always were. It doesn't matter, I said calmly. I have copies. Digital and physical. And the boys themselves are proof enough. Richard's face was thunderous. Find him. Now. Check every exit. He couldn't have gotten far. I already knew where Julian would go. While Richard's people searched the cathedral and surrounding streets, I slipped out with the boys and drove to the one place Julian thought was safe. His private lab. The black site, he called it. A research facility he'd built off the books, funded with money skimmed from various projects over the years. I'd learned about it 3 years ago, back when I still worked for Pierce Pharmaceuticals. Back when I was just another scientist he thought he could control. The building was in an industrial area, unmarked and unremarkable. I parked across the street and watched. Sure enough, 15 minutes later, a black car pulled up and Julian stumbled out. He looked terrible. His tuxedo was torn, his hair a mess, his perfect facade completely shattered. He ran to the entrance and disappeared inside. I waited 5 more minutes, then took the boys to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. The owner was a friend who owed me a favor. Keep them safe, I told her. I'll be back in an hour. Then I walked into Julian's black site, using the security code I'd memorized years ago. He never changed it. Too arrogant to think anyone could touch him. I found him in the document room, feeding papers into an industrial shredder. He was laughing. Actually laughing. You have no proof now, Elena, he said without turning around. He must have heard me enter, or maybe he'd been expecting me. I destroyed the original samples. All of them. The DNA you used for those tests? Gone. And without originals, any lawyer worth their fee will tear your results apart. He turned to face me, his smile manic. You think you're so smart. You think you've won. But you're still the same failed scientist who couldn't cut it in the real world. You're nothing. I smiled back at him.
Calm.
Confident. I didn't need the samples, Julian. His smile faltered. What? I'm the one who designed the security system for this lab 3 years ago. I pulled out my phone. You hired a company called Secure Tech Solutions. Remember them? His face went pale. The founder, Marcus Chun, is my cousin. I designed your entire system under a pseudonym. Every camera, every sensor, every backup protocol. I hit a button on my phone. The monitors around the room flickered to life. Every single shredded document appeared on screen, fully reconstructed. High-resolution scans taken the moment each page entered the shredder. I've been recording everything you've done in this lab for 3 years, Julian. Every experiment, every transfer, every lie. The screens filled with documents, emails, financial records. Years of crimes, perfectly preserved. Julian stared at the monitors, his mouth opening and closing. Then he lunged for the main computer, trying to shut it down. I'd anticipated that too. The keyboard was locked. The system was running on automated protocols I'd built into the foundation of his security. He couldn't stop it even if he wanted to. What is this? He whispered, reading the documents on screen. But he knew. He'd written most of them. The screens showed everything. The clinical trial for his miracle cardiac drug, the one that was supposed to launch next month with FDA approval. The trial that would make Pierce Pharmaceuticals billions and cement Julian's reputation as a medical innovator. Except the trial results were fake. The drug didn't work. Worse than that, it was toxic. 12 test subjects had experienced serious complications. 3 had died. And Julian had buried it all, falsified the data, and bribed the oversight committee. You're going to kill people, I said quietly, looking at the evidence. Your miracle drug causes heart failure in 60% of patients over 65. You knew that. You didn't care. They were already dying. Julian snapped, finding his voice. Terminal patients. Their deaths couldn't be traced to the drug. Their families trusted you. They trusted Pierce Pharmaceuticals. I felt sick. How could you? Julian's expression changed. The panic shifted to calculation. He was a survivor. Always had been. Okay, he said, holding up his hands. Okay. You win. I'll acknowledge the triplets. I'll give them everything. Trust funds worth millions. The best schools. My name. Everything a father should give. He stepped closer to me. Just delete the server, Elena. Wipe it clean. We can both walk away from this. You get what you want for the boys, I keep my company. Everyone wins. I almost laughed. After everything, he still thought I could be bought. The boys don't want her blood money, Julian. Then what do you want? His voice rose, desperate now. Revenge? Is that it? You want to destroy me because I wouldn't play house with you? I want justice, I said simply. That's when he revealed the darkest secret. The one I'd suspected but couldn't prove until now.
Fine.
You want the truth? I didn't just reject the triplets, Elena. I used them. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? Their cord blood. The samples from their birth. I used them for genetic testing without your consent. Experimental protocols that would never pass ethical review. He smiled, ugly and cruel. Your sons helped fund my research. Their DNA is in my database. So even if you destroy me, you'll never escape what I've done to them. Rage flooded through me, hot and blinding. I wanted to hurt him, to make him feel a fraction of the pain he'd caused. But I'd learned patience, learned to plan, learned to be smarter than my emotions. Everything you just said about the cord blood? I said quietly. It just went live to the board of directors. I held up my phone. The screen showed an active conference call. 15 board members, all listening in stunned silence. Julian's face went from smug to horrified in seconds. You're recording this? I've been recording since I walked in. I looked at the camera hidden in my necklace, the microphone woven into my bracelet. Advanced tech. A gift from my cousin at Secure Tech. Julian lunged at me, grabbed my arm. I felt his fingers dig into my skin, saw the violence in his eyes. Then the door burst open. Police. 3 officers with guns drawn, led by a detective I recognized from the news. "Julian Pierce," the detective said. "Step away from her. Now." Richard Montgomery had kept his promise. Called in every favor. The police had been listening too. Julian released me and backed toward the window. For a second, I thought he might jump. We were 4 stories up. But he just stood there, trapped and defeated. Julian's lawyers were expensive. The best money could buy. They had him out on bail within 4 hours, despite the evidence, despite everything. I watched him walk out of the police station on the evening news, smiling for cameras like he'd just won an award. The system was designed for people like him. Rich. Connected. Powerful. That night, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You think you won? Check your bank account." My stomach dropped. I opened my banking app with shaking hands. My savings account was empty. $200,000. Gone. Every penny I'd saved, every sacrifice I'd made for the boys, vanished. I called the bank immediately. The representative was apologetic but firm. "The transfer was authorized through your login credentials, Ms. Rodriguez. It went to an offshore account, then bounced through several locations. Our fraud team is investigating, but what? The final destination appears to be a site on the dark web, one flagged by federal authorities as a marketplace for illegal services." She paused. "Including contract killings." Ice ran through my veins. Julian was framing me, making it look like I'd hired a hitman, probably to kill him. The evidence would be perfect. A jilted ex-employee, desperate for revenge, hiring someone to eliminate the father of her children. I was arrested the next morning. At my apartment in front of the boys. They cried as the officers put handcuffs on me, reading me my rights. My neighbor took the triplets, promising to keep them safe until family arrived. But I barely heard her over the roaring in my ears. This couldn't be happening. The holding cell was cold. Gray concrete, metal bench, the smell of industrial cleaner and despair. I sat there for 3 hours before anyone came. When the door finally opened, I expected my lawyer. Instead, a woman walked in. She was around 40, with dark hair streaked with gray and a face that had seen violence. Scars ran down the left side of her neck, disappearing under her collar. She smiled at me. "Hello, Elena. I'm Sophia." The name hit me like a punch. Sophia Pierce? The dead one. Yes. She sat down across from me, moving with a slight limp. Julian's sister. The one who supposedly died in a car accident 10 years ago. I stared at her. The family had mourned. There'd been a funeral. A grave. "You're alive." "Barely," she said, touching the scars on her neck. "Julian tried to kill me when I found out about the embezzlement. He cut the brake lines on my car. I went off a cliff, into a ravine. Should have died." Sophia's story spilled out in the cold holding cell. 10 years ago, she'd been the CFO of Pierce Pharmaceuticals. The responsible one. The one who actually cared about the company their grandfather built. "I found discrepancies in the accounts," she said. "Our grandfather had just died, left everything to be divided among the grandchildren. But the numbers didn't match the will. Millions were missing." She'd confronted Julian. He'd smiled, promised to explain, then arranged her accident. I woke up in a hospital in Mexico, under a fake name. A truck driver had found the wreck, pulled me out before the car exploded. By the time I was conscious enough to explain who I was, Julian had already held my funeral. She'd spent 10 years in hiding, recovering, investigating, building a case. I've been watching him, Elena, waiting for the right moment to strike. When I heard about you, about the triplets, about this lawsuit, I knew it was time. Why didn't you come forward before? Because I needed him to commit fresh crimes. The statute of limitations on embezzlement was running out. But fraud? Medical malpractice? Attempted murder through a hitman setup? She smiled grimly. Those are current. And I can prove all of it. She pulled out a phone. Starting with getting you out of here. Julian called an emergency board meeting the next day. Sophia's lawyer had gotten me released on my own recognizance, the hitman charges looking shakier by the hour. Now we were implementing phase 2 of Sophia's plan. The boardroom of Pierce Pharmaceuticals was exactly as I remembered. Sleek glass walls, a table that could seat 30, the company logo etched into the floor. Julian walked in at exactly 9 a.m., flanked by his lawyers. He looked confident.
Smug.
He thought he'd neutralized every threat. Then he saw me, sitting in the chairman's seat at the head of the table. And Sophia, very much alive, sitting beside me. Julian froze. His face went through several expressions at once.
Shock.
Denial. Terror. "Hello, brother," Sophia said calmly. "Miss me?" The lawyers started talking all at once. Impossible. She was dead. This was some kind of trick. But the board members were staring at Sophia, recognition dawning. Many of them had worked with her 10 years ago. Sophia? The current CFO, an older man named Harrison, stood up slowly. "How is this possible?" "Julian tried to kill me," she said simply. "He failed. I've been waiting for the right time to return. And, thanks to Elena, that time is now." Julian found his voice. "This is insane. You can't just walk back in here after 10 years and claim what's rightfully mine?" "Yes, I can." Sophia pulled out a document. Yellowed with age, but perfectly preserved. "Our grandfather's original will. Grandfather didn't leave Pierce Pharmaceuticals to the firstborn son," she said, sliding it across the table to Harrison. "He left it to the most competent heir as proven by innovation and ethical leadership." The CFO read carefully, his expression changing. "This is notarized. Witnessed. It's the original document." "Julian hid it," Sophia continued. "Produced a fake will that left everything to him as the eldest male heir. But I had a copy in a safety deposit box grandfather set up for me before he died." She looked at her brother. "You've been running this company illegally for 10 years, Julian. Every decision you've made, every contract you've signed, it's all invalid." Julian's lawyer jumped in. "That will was superseded by proper probate proceedings. You can't just—" "Actually, we can." Sophia's lawyer, a sharp woman in her 50s, stood up. "If the original will was hidden through fraud, all subsequent legal proceedings are void. Ms. Pierce has every right to challenge the current structure." The board members were murmuring, looking at each other uncertainly. This was bigger than a family dispute. This was corporate warfare. "But the competency clause," another board member said. "How do you prove that after all this time?" Sophia smiled. "The clinical trial fraud proves Julian's incompetence beautifully." Julian slammed his fist on the table. "You can't prove anything. Elena's recordings are inadmissible. She obtained them illegally." "Actually, the recordings are perfectly legal," I interrupted. "I was a party to every conversation I recorded. Single party, consent state. Any lawyer worth their fee knows that." "Then the documents from the black site were obtained with a warrant," Sophia said. "Based on probable cause from the recordings. All admissible." Julian's face was red now, veins standing out on his forehead. "This is a setup. A conspiracy between a dead woman and a disgruntled employee. And the triplets," I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. Ethan, Noah, and Liam walked in, holding hands. They'd been waiting outside with my neighbor. "Julian's faked clinical trials disqualified him from running this company," I said. "But there's more. The triplets aren't just proof of his character. They're proof of his crimes." I pulled out my laptop and connected it to the boardroom screen. Genetic sequences appeared, complex and beautiful. Julian used the boy's cord blood for illegal genetic testing. He told me so himself, and we have the recording. But what he doesn't know is that I'm not a failed scientist. I engineered a specific genetic marker into their DNA before they were born. The boardroom went silent. Harrison leaned forward, studying the screen. "You engineered your own children's DNA?" "A marker," I clarified. "Harmless. Undetectable, without specific testing. But it proves definitively when their genetic material was used, where and for what purpose." I pulled up another file. This is from Julian's black site database, the experimental protocol he's been running for 3 years. And here, in subjects 19, 20, and 21, you can see the marker. My marker. The implications hit the board like a bomb. He experimented on children, someone whispered. On his own children? Without consent. I continued. Without ethics approval. Without any oversight whatsoever. The boys are living evidence of his crimes. Julian stood up, so fast his chair fell backward. You're insane. You think anyone will believe you engineered your own children? That's science fiction. It's real. Sophia interrupted. And we have 3 independent geneticists ready to testify to it. Elena didn't fail, Julian. She was recruited by the Human Genome Project while you were still in medical school. She left Pierce Pharmaceuticals because she refused to participate in your fraud. My past, finally revealed. I'd hidden it for so long. Played the role of failed scientist, let Julian believe his own lies. But I'd spent 5 years at the cutting edge of genetic research before the boys were born. The marker is their protection, I said softly. So no one could ever steal their identity, their DNA, their future. I just never expected their own father to be the threat. Julian's assistant, a quiet woman named Rebecca, who'd worked for him for 8 years, stood up from her seat at the side of the room. She'd been taking notes, as always. Invisible. I have something, Rebecca said. Her voice shook, but her hand was steady as she pulled a flash drive from her pocket. Mr. Pierce told me to destroy all the data from the black site server. To wipe it completely. She walked forward and handed the drive to Sophia. But I kept a copy. Everything. Including his personal video logs. The room went silent. Julian's face transformed from angry to desperate. Rebecca, you signed an NDA. You can't. The NDA doesn't cover criminal activity, she said quietly. And what you did was criminal. Sophia plugged the drive into the computer. A menu appeared, hundreds of files organized by date. She clicked on one labeled Family Strategy, Private. Julian's face appeared on the screen. He was in his home office, drinking scotch, talking to the camera like it was a diary. Mother and father still think I'm the golden child, his recorded voice said. They have no idea about the offshore accounts. Once I liquidate the family assets, they'll be left with nothing. Serves them right for always favoring Sophia. He laughed. Drank. Continued. The company will be mine completely in 5 years. I'll sell it, take the billions, and disappear. Let them all rot. There were more videos. Dozens of them. Julian mocking our parents. Planning to drain every family account. Laughing about the employees he'd defrauded. Discussing the clinical trial deaths like they were minor inconveniences. The board watched in horrified silence. But the people I watched were our parents. Mother and Father Pierce sat at the far end of the table. They'd supported Julian through everything. The wedding scandal. The DNA revelations. The fraud accusations. They'd stood by their son because family came first. Now they watched their golden child reveal his true self. He's been planning this for years, Mother whispered. Her face had gone pale, aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Father stood up, walked to the screen, and stared at his son's recorded face. Then he turned to Julian, standing frozen by his overturned chair. You are not my son, Father said. Each word was ice. Effective immediately, you are disowned from this family. You will inherit nothing. You will receive nothing. Your name will be removed from every family document. Father, you can't. I can. I will. He looked at Sophia. Welcome home, daughter. The family is yours now. Julian lunged toward the computer, trying to stop the videos. Security guards stepped in, holding him back. His lawyers were packing up, abandoning ship. This isn't over, Julian screamed. I have resources. I have money. I'll fight all of you. With what money? Sophia asked calmly. The offshore accounts are frozen. The federal prosecutor filed charges this morning. You're broke, Julian. And you're going to prison. Julian ran. Of course he did. The board meeting dissolved into chaos, lawyers calling authorities, reporters somehow getting wind of the story. By the time the police arrived, Julian had disappeared. He surfaced 3 days later in Spain. The villa he'd bought with the $50 million, the one registered under Vanessa's name. It was a beautiful property on the coast, all white stone and blue ocean views. Julian must have thought he'd be safe there. He arrived to find Claire Montgomery sitting by the pool, sipping wine. "Claire?" Julian's voice was captured on the security camera footage that later appeared on every news channel. "What are you doing here?" "My father bought this villa in the foreclosure sale this morning," she said calmly. "You're trespassing, Julian." Her father's security team appeared from inside the house. Julian tried to run again, but there was nowhere to go. The Spanish authorities were already there, responding to an international warrant. He was extradited within a week. I watched the news coverage with the boys, safe in Sophia's house. She'd offered us a place to stay while everything settled. "Is that our father?" Ethan asked, watching Julian being led onto a plane in handcuffs. "Yes." "Is he a bad person?" I thought about how to answer that. He made very bad choices. He hurt a lot of people. The trial took 6 months. Julian was facing 20 years on multiple charges. Fraud, embezzlement, illegal human experimentation, attempted murder. The evidence was overwhelming. But there was one more twist. Julian had been taking his own miracle drug, the toxic cardiac medication he'd planned to release to the public. He'd been using it secretly, believing his own lies about its effectiveness, thinking it would keep him sharp and healthy. Instead, it was killing him. Slowly, painfully. He called me from prison. His voice was weak, defeated. "Elena, please. I know you created an antidote. I know you figured out how to reverse the cardiac damage." He was right. I'd spent months analyzing the drug, understanding its mechanisms, developing a cure. It was sitting in Sophia's lab right now. "I'm dying," Julian sobbed. "Please. For the boys. Don't let them grow up knowing their father died like this." I sat in silence, listening to him beg. This man who'd laughed at my pregnancy, who'd stolen from his own children, who'd tried to frame me for murder. "You told me I was a failed scientist, Julian," I said finally. "You told me to relax, that it was all in my head." "Elena, please." I hung up. The next day, I visited him in the prison infirmary. He looked terrible. Gray skin, labored breathing, the monitors beeping erratically. I held up a vial. Clear liquid. The antidote. Julian's eyes locked onto it, desperate and pleading. "I can make this all right," he whispered. "I'll testify. I'll give everything to the boys. Please." I set the vial on the table beside his bed, just out of reach of his handcuffed wrist. "You know what, Julian? You were right about one thing. I should relax. It's really not my problem anymore." I walked to the door. "Wait," he screamed. "Elena, don't leave. Please. I'm sorry." "I'm so sorry." The door locked behind me with a final click. Outside, the sun was shining. Sophia was waiting with the boys. Pierce Pharmaceuticals was being restructured under ethical leadership. The new name? Pierce Rodriguez Labs. The boys and I owned 40%. We turned Julian's empire into something that actually helped people. Something honest. Real. Worth building. Ethan tugged my hand. "Mom, can we get ice cream?" I smiled down at my sons. 3 beautiful boys with mismatched eyes and unlimited futures. "Yes. We can get anything you want." We walked toward the car, leaving Julian and his begging behind. The antidote sat on that table for 3 days before a nurse, following protocol, administered it. He lived. But he'd spend the next 20 years in prison, knowing that I'd had the power to help him, and walked away. Just like he'd walked away from us. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the sound of a door locking. Sometimes it's teaching your children that actions have consequences, that truth matters, that you don't have to forgive people who refuse to earn it. The triplets walked into a wedding and froze a room. One DNA result destroyed an empire. But what mattered most? We walked out together, into the sunlight, finally free.